This conversation features Milo Yiannopoulos discussing a wide range of complex and controversial topics related to homosexuality, societal attitudes, identity politics, and personal experience. Central themes include the question, why are you gay? The cultural and political dynamics surrounding LGBTQ issues, the rise in self-identification rates, and the notion of sexual orientation as a trauma response. Yiannopoulos shares candid reflections on his own life, the pressure to conform to certain identities, and the possibility of change through therapy, challenging prevailing narratives and encouraging open discussion. The discussion opens by referencing a viral Ugandan television interview where a presenter repeatedly asks a trans activist, "Why are you gay?" This question is striking because it is rarely asked openly in Western societies, where the topic of homosexuality is often treated as settled. The Ugandan context, with its distinct cultural and legal stances, contrasts sharply with Western norms, highlighting a tension between openness to questioning and social taboos. The interview's polite but perplexing tone exemplifies the difficulty many have in articulating why someone would be gay, and it underscores the broader issue of how societies discuss or avoid discussing sexual orientation. The conversation moves on to examine reactions from Western leaders and institutions to Uganda's anti-homosexuality laws, including the so-called aggravated homosexuality provisions that carry a death penalty. The U.S. government, politicians like Joe Biden and Ted Cruz, the World Bank, and religious figures condemned the legislation, often without full understanding of its specifics, which in reality criminalizes acts like rape and intentional disease transmission rather than sexuality per se. The sanctions and withdrawal of aid triggered a humanitarian crisis involving famine and malnutrition, raising questions about the efficacy and morality of imposing Western social values on other countries through economic pressure. Milo and the host critique the shift in Western culture towards not only tolerating but affirmatively endorsing homosexuality as a fundamental good akin to civil rights. Joe Biden's anecdote about his father's casual acceptance of gay love in 1962 is called into question for historical accuracy, but serves as a symbol of how contemporary America frames its values. The rise in self-identified non-heterosexual youth, from about 6% to over 20% in just a decade, is noted as evidence that cultural shifts, rather than genetics alone, influence sexual identity. Yiannopoulos challenges the commonly accepted "born this way" narrative. He argues that sexual orientation, specifically male homosexuality, is often a response to trauma, family dynamics, and environmental factors rather than a fixed genetic trait. Citing higher rates of reported homosexuality in communities with fatherlessness or overbearing mothers, notably within Black and Jewish populations, he frames homosexuality primarily as a trauma response or coping mechanism rather than an innate identity. He also points to the historical psychiatric view, rooted in Freudian psychology, that sexual orientation can be influenced by childhood relationships and experiences. The discussion turns to how public declarations of gay identity have become political tools, particularly for ambitious politicians like Pete Buttigieg, whose whole public persona is entwined with his sexual orientation. Coming out is portrayed as a strategic act that can open doors in modern American politics, blurring the lines between genuine identity and performance. This theme extends to criticism of mainstream gay culture, particularly the domestication of gay identity through adoption, surrogacy, and aspirational family life, which Milo regards as an inauthentic simulacrum that masks underlying issues. Yiannopoulos explores the interplay between homosexuality and power, noting a disproportionate representation of closeted or openly gay individuals within conservative political spheres, which he finds contradictory and puzzling. He speculates that the attraction to power among homosexuals may be a reaction to earlier feelings of powerlessness and lack of agency over their desires and bodies. This dynamic, in his view, fosters a tendency among some gay men towards exercising control or domination in public life, sometimes with harmful consequences. Milo discusses the fagotization, his term, of society, a process distinct from feminization, in which gay men influence fashion, culture, music, and consumer habits in ways that mainstream male heterosexuals may find alienating or emasculating. He critiques aspects of contemporary pop culture, fashion runways, and social norms as being shaped by this influence, often prioritizing aesthetics disconnected from traditional masculine norms or vitality. He argues that this cultural shift weakens society morally and creatively. Yiannopoulos shares a deeply personal account of his past life involved in promiscuous gay culture and drug use, framed as a form of addiction and self-destructive behavior. He describes a process of self-discovery and faith renewal that led him to embrace celibacy for nearly 5 years, which brought clarity, peace, and a renewed interest in genuine engagement with life and stories. He contrasts earlier ironic detachment and surface-level engagement with culture to a newfound desire for authenticity and meaning. The conversation delves into the taboo surrounding any notion that a person might leave homosexuality or reject a gay identity. Laws banning conversion therapy are critiqued as forcing people to remain gay against their will, which Milo finds troubling. He introduces the concept of reintegrative therapy, a modernized form of conversion therapy based on rewiring brain responses to stimuli associated with unwanted same-sex attraction. This therapy, he argues, is evidence-based and has helped some people reduce or eliminate unwanted desires through repeated emotional conditioning, similar to treatments for PTSD and compulsive behaviors. Yiannopoulos explains how this form of therapy works by producing the original stimulus that triggers arousal, then immediately introducing a different, unexpected emotional response, retraining the brain over time. He compares it to rebooting a computer free of a virus or applying Control-Delete commands. This process allows people to overcome traumatic conditioning or compulsive urges by replacing them with neutral or negative associations. Though it appears odd or unorthodox to outsiders, it is grounded in decades of psychological research and brain plasticity. Throughout the discussion, Milo stresses his regret at helping mainstream homosexuality in conservative circles, believing it paved the way for harmful social trends he did not foresee. He critiques the inability of society to allow honest conversations about the pain and difficulties some gay people face, the range of experiences within LGBTQ+ communities, and the hope for change or healing. He emphasizes that his own story and the stories of others demonstrate that change is possible and necessary, but is being actively suppressed by political and social pressures. A recurring theme is the dissatisfaction and emptiness many experience in promiscuous homosexual lifestyles, characterized by addictive behaviors and a lack of lasting fulfillment. Milo highlights the sterile nature of gay male sex, disconnected from procreation and traditional sexual functions, which leads to ongoing attempts to compensate through quantity or variety, never truly achieving satisfaction. The emotional and spiritual consequences of living in denial or addiction are underscored as reasons some seek change. Allusions to Catholic teaching, natural law, and the spiritual dimension frame much of the discussion about sexuality, fulfillment, and meaning. Yiannopoulos points to religious concepts like co-creation with God through procreation and the sacramental nature of heterosexual marriage as benchmarks for evaluating human sexual behavior. The rejection of these norms and the embrace of contrary lifestyles is viewed as a departure from a meaningful, ordered life. Milo discusses the complex relationship between gay men and women in culture, including the influence gay men have on fashion and media representations of women, often leading to exaggerated or grotesque portrayals aligning with their own internal conflicts and culture. He also notes the role of single mothers in recent social trends, including the rise of transgender identification among youth, suggesting connections between family dynamics, parental responsibility, and identity politics. Finally, the discussion addresses how modern politics and popular culture enforce rigid identities and moral frameworks around sexuality, discouraging dissent or exploration of alternative views. The speaker laments the loss of open inquiry and nuance in favor of ideological conformity, highlighting the risks of creating a society in which disagreement results in ostracism or punishment, both domestically and internationally. This environment, he argues, hampers individual freedom and societal health.